Yesterday, the developer shared a metric ton of new info, all focused on audio. So if you're an audio fan, especially one that isn't pleased with how Forza Horizon 4 sounds, you might want to stick around through the end of this video because there's a lot to unpack here. I'll leave a link to every clip I'm using in this video so you can watch without having to listen to me talking all over it. Let's get it started. There's a reason why Forza Horizon 5 is coming out 3 years after the current one, and it's not only to give the developers of Forza Motorsport more time. It took the devs at Playground Games around 3 years to rebuild the entire sound of the game from the ground up, so the extra time was needed. This allowed them to rethink every aspect of their audio pipeline to come up with the biggest jump in both audio features and audio quality the series has ever seen. This new and improved processes fully replace the old one. There are over 320 new car recordings added to the existing sound library. A lot of work has been done to record the sounds of exposed engines. To prevent the sound from getting distorted by the wind going around it, they muffled the microphones. That's a different approach from how they usually do for engines that sit inside engine bays. The audio team used a minimum of 8 microphones to capture the sounds of each one of the cars in the game, and for cars that needed it, they used additional mics to make sure they captured every detail possible. For hybrid cars, they strategically placed a microphone to capture the electric whine. The Toyota Supra is confirmed to be in the game, and the devs wanted to illustrate the difference between a stock model and an upgraded one, and that's the reason why they sourced different types of Supra for audio recording. A few microphones broke because of the amount of revving they captured. Just figured I would throw this out there. Forza Horizon 5 has a bunch of new technologies, one of which is called hybrid looping. If you notice the difference in how some of the cars that got added to Forza Horizon 4 through post-launch updates sound when compared to the ones that launched with the game, this technology is the reason why. They used it in 10 to 15% of the cars in that game, but now with Forza Horizon 5, 100% of the cars use it, which means the improvements we saw are gonna be present across the board in the new game. A lot of people in the community have been complaining about the audio in Forza games for years, and Forza Horizon 4 kinda became the focus of this feedback because this game was a massive downgrade in audio quality when compared to previous games. This is the reason why the developers decided to come up with a new system where they could capture and process audio that sounds closer to the real thing. In previous games, they captured the car's sounds in a dyno using an automated system that was based on engine revs. It was set up so that it would capture an audio sample every time it hit 1000 RPM. In practice, that meant that from 0 to 1000, it would capture an audio sample. From 1000 to 2000, another audio sample, and so on. They would later stitch these audio samples together to put them in the game. And this method alone was the reason why cars sounded so artificial in Forza Horizon 4. The capturing process itself was very mechanic, so it's no surprise the result would also sound very mechanic. With Forza Horizon 5, they created a new method called Granular Synthesis that captures the entire rev range in each of the gears and then chops each rotation into tiny individual samples, resulting in thousands of audio files that can be played back in the game. The benefit of this method is that it runs at 90 frames per second while the game runs at 60, and this translates into car sounds that feel a lot more responsive. They wanted to create something that allows them to portray a lot of the characteristics of each car, and that's how they came up with the Granular Synthesis. When you record audio through a dyno, everything sounds linear because the car is physically stuck in one place. Recording audio on an airstrip allows for a lot more nuance to be captured, especially when decelerating, so now you'll be able to hear all the cracks and pops that were missing in Forza Horizon 4. Cockpit sounds were captured using impulse responses. If you ever recorded any instrument in a studio, there's a good chance you've heard this term before. If you haven't, impulse responses basically allow you to capture the raw signal across the entire frequency range as it comes through. It's the purest way to capture an audio source, and in a game like Forza Horizon, this allows things like echo quality to be massively improved. With this information, the game now is able to calculate the amount of echo of external audio sources when driving in first person. So things like skids, rain, and wind will all have the right amount of echo coming through the car body and into the cockpit, making it sound closer to real life. There are different skid sounds based on the type of vehicle and the size of tires you're running. Turbo sounds are improved thanks to yet another new technology they added to their audio pipeline called Modular system. It basically sources info from their database, taking into account things like engine type and era, and layering them on top of the sounds of the car. This is a massive improvement over the older static system, so the tail end of the turbo sounds will feel more dynamic and different from one another thanks to the modular system in Forza Horizon 5. The sounds now feature turbo, supercharger, and transmission whines, all running through the new system. There are 500 new engine swaps. 500. There's a new feature called Audible Upgrades that allow you to preview in real time the changes that different upgrade parts make to the sound of your car. So no more having to drive out of your garage to be able to hear it. I'm obviously talking all over it, but I'll leave a link to the original video in the description down below so you can check out how it sounds. And that's not the only thing. If you have trained ears, you'll be able to tell the exact upgrades other players are running on their cars based on sound alone. They fixed an issue that bothered a lot of people in Forza Horizon 4, where AI and player cars would sound different even though they were the exact same models. With Forza Horizon 5, when two of the exact same Lamborghinis are driving alongside, they'll sound the same, unless of course you have different upgrade parts installed. In Forza Horizon 4, the way the limiter sounds is standard across the board, meaning that the sound it makes when it bounces off the rev limiter is the same regardless of the car. In Forza Horizon 5, the rev limiter will sound different based on what upgrade parts you have installed in your car. Depending on what you have, it may bounce off slower or quicker. Although ray-traced graphics are only present in Forza Vista, the technology is one of the biggest reasons behind most of the audio improvements in Forza Horizon 5. The game engine sends out ray traces to detect walls, buildings, and ceilings, capturing echo as it travels back to the player. The game will support Dolby Atmos, which, by the way, I highly recommend you download on the Xbox Store, regardless of what headphones you're using, because it improves the audio so much, it's hard to go back. When using Dolby Atmos through headphones, you hear a level of reverberation that's new to the series. If you're driving through tunnels, for example, you hear the sounds bouncing off the walls around you and on top of you. If you're driving around the canyon area, sounds will bounce off the canyon walls. The echo when you're driving through the city will sound a lot more spacious as it bounces off the buildings around you. The echo on the rainforest, on the other hand, will sound a lot more muffled. This works thanks to how every material in the game has been set up with a different absorption coefficient. That's an audio term that tells the engine how much sound needs to bounce off each material. Concrete, for example, bounces a lot of sound, while foliage absorbs a lot of it, resulting in a lot less sound bouncing off of it. Ray tracing is also used for sound occlusion. It will take into account the position of every car around you, so if a car is behind a building, for example, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly where it is, so you can avoid it by driving somewhere else. This is going to be very useful for the Eliminator, less so in races, although it's a plus to be able to tell where the car behind you is coming from without having to look at the map. Thanks to the power of the Xbox Series consoles, the developers were able to use a new compression method that allows for a higher audio fidelity that sounds really close to uncompressed audio. That's the reason why what has been shown for Forza Horizon 5 so far sounds a lot cleaner and more defined than ever before. And it's not only the cars that benefit from that. Things like ambience, the dialogue, and even the music sound better now on Series consoles. This new audio processing power will allow you to hear a lot more cars around you and all of the different upgrades and turbo parts they're running. Convertibles will sound different depending on whether you're running with the top up or down. If it's up, the cockpit will sound a lot more muffled. If it's down, you'll be able to hear the ambience, including positional audio sources like rain, if you're running Dolby Atmos through your headphones. And that's all I have for this video. There's another live stream happening next week where the devs are gonna go over the map and the different biomes, so I'm gonna be covering that. Hope you've enjoyed this one. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.